Throughout the history of Formula One, there have been many drivers who never really got a chance to prove themselves in the machinery they deserved. Recently, a now 36-year-old Nico Hülkenberg surpassed Andrea de Cesare's record for the most F1 race entries and starts without being able to attain a race win, yet he also holds the strange distinction of not even having a podium, with his best career finish being 4th place, a position he has achieved 3 times in 14 years. People like to point out the German driver's lack of rostrums and use it against him, despite the fact he's never driven for a team that finished in the top 3 in the constructors while he was with them. The only teammate he had who scored an elusive podium during their time as counterparts was Sergio Perez, who claimed 3rd place 4 times, but Hülkenberg has had opportunities of his own. He qualified on pole position for the race at Interlagos in his debut season, after braving it out in greasy conditions on slick tyres when everyone else was on Inters, yet dropped back to 8th on Sunday, then was only 2.5 seconds behind Kimi Räikkönen in the 2012 Belgian Grand Prix as the Finn finished 3rd. During that year's race in Sao Paulo, Nico led for 30 laps before crashing into Lewis Hamilton while the pair negotiated backmarkers, eventually finishing 5th after he had to serve a drive-through penalty. He was only 4 seconds off at the 2013 race in Monza, as he was 5th for Sauber, then got 4th at Korea, albeit much further behind. Hülkenberg finished in the top 5 times in his stint with Perez on the other side of the garage, 4 of which came in 2014. 3 times during that stretch, he was within a reasonable distance less than 10 seconds from a rostrum, and although he bottled opportunities, like during the race at Hockenheim in 2019, it's not like he's missed every single chance he's had by making mistakes. Hülkenberg has had a 14-year-long career where he's not had an opportunity to drive a top car, which may change in 2026 as Audi swoops into F1, but most drivers don't even get a third of the time in the sport that Nico's had, even if they show a lot of potential. Ironically enough, this video focuses on one of Hülkenberg's compatriots who came and went during the German's time on the grid. He had a lot of raw talent, yet was overlooked several times during his career. Let me tell you the story of Pascal Wehrlein.
Manuel Fangio is in the lead on the last lap of the German Grand Prix.
Jim Clark drives the Formula One Motorsport to victory on the racetracks of the world.
And look at that! Out that, colossally, that's Mansell! That is Nigel Mansell! Alain Prost has taken the advantage. Senna is trying to go through on the inside, and it's happened immediately! This is amazing! Senna goes off at the first corner.
And I've got to stop, because I've got a lump in my throat.
Pascal Wehrlein was born in Sigmaringen, Germany, on the 18th of October 1994 to a German father and a mother of Mauritian descent. He started karting in 2003 and won a succession of domestic titles from then until 2009, his crowning achievement coming in that latter year in the ADAC Kart Masters, where he finished 5th in the standings in the KF2 category. His debut single-seater campaign came during 2010 as he competed in ADAC Formel Masters, placing 6th in a fairly weak field, although he did get a victory at the Sachsenring and a pole at the TT Assen circuit. He returned to the series in 2011, winning 8 of the 24 races and achieving 11 total podiums, although the only other notable drivers in the series were 2016 Porsche Super Cup champion Sven Muller and several GP2 and F2 rejects such as Artem Markelov, Roy Nissany and Gustav Malya. He moved up to do a dual campaign the year after, driving in both the Formula 3 Euro Series and the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Don't ask me why those two names are so similar, because I don't know either. He finished 2nd in the former series behind Daniel Juncadella, and in the latter was 4th behind a stacked field which included Juncadella again, Raffaele Marciello, who I roasted on Twitter the other day and got a like from him, and Felix Rosenqvist. Wehrlein even finished ahead of Carlos Sainz on merit, then he had a very quiet 2013 season. He started off well in Euro F3 by finishing on the podium in all 3 races he competed in, then he made a surprise switch to a full-time campaign in the DTM series, becoming the youngest driver in the competition's history, aged 18. He placed last in the standings that year, then remained in touring cars throughout the year after, getting a pole and a win at the Euro Lausitzring on his way to 8th in the championship, and in September of 2014 was signed as the first ever Mercedes junior driver in Formula 1. Then in his 2015 DTM campaign, he managed to win the title despite winning only 2 of the 18 rounds held and getting just 4 podiums. He also fulfilled his duties for Mercedes at the start of the year, driving for both the Brackley team and Force India during pre-season testing in F1. Off the back of his victorious touring car campaign, he pulled a Paul di Resta type move and made the switch back to single-seater machinery for 2016, going into a full-time F1 drive with the newly rebranded Manor Racing Team, formerly known as either Virgin or Marussia, as the backmarker outfit struck a deal with Mercedes to use their wind tunnel in exchange for Wehrlein's place in the team. His debut came in the Australian Grand Prix, where he qualified last in the mind-bogglingly stupid new elimination-style system. He finished 16th and last on Sunday as his teammate Rio Haryanto retired with driveshaft failure on lap 17. The mongoloid qualifying structure returned for the Bahrain Grand Prix despite it needing to be projected into the sun with a massive cannon, and while Haryanto only got one lap in and ended up on the back row, Wehrlein managed to drag his car all the way up to 16th and was the final driver to be knocked out in Q1. He advanced to 13th place in the race ahead of 4 other cars, including the Sauber of Felipe Nasr, both Force Indias, and he was 27 seconds ahead of his teammate, who was last. He crashed in the opening few minutes of qualifying in Shanghai and was unable to set a lap time, placing him on the last row of the grid alongside Lewis Hamilton, but then he made it up to 18th on Sunday, 3 places and half a minute clear of Haryanto again, before another anonymous 18th in Sochi, while his Indonesian counterpart retired due to a collision on the opening lap. 16th in Spain, a quarter of a minute ahead, was followed by a changeable conditions Monaco race that saw him beat Rio by a scarcely believable 77 seconds. Actually, never mind, it's not scarcely believable to beat Haryanto by that big a margin. He was 1.5 seconds clear of him in Montreal qualifying, then drove to 17th, 3/4 of a minute ahead, then had brake failure on lap 39 in Baku. After that came the Austrian Grand Prix weekend. Wehrlein qualified 12th on merit in the second worst car on the grid, then kept it in 11th in the closing laps. When Sergio Perez had an accident caused by a suspected suspension issue on the penultimate tour of the circuit, it moved Pascal's Manor up into the final points position as he came home in 10th, scoring his team's first top 10 finish since the late Jules Bianchi did so in Monaco 2014. However, I have a potentially unpopular opinion about this race. In one of my previous videos, I centred around Bianchi's career and part of it covered that Monaco race where he scored points. I took a deep dive and explained why his performance nowadays is overrated, as 5 cars in front of him on the road retired with mechanical failures, and the Frenchman himself forced a very clumsy move on Kamui Kobayashi's Caterham, which gave the Japanese driver considerable damage and caused him to finish 2 laps down on the Marussia in the end, and I think Jules should have been penalised for this incident. Incorporating both the qualifying and race performances together, I think Pascal Wehrlein's point-scoring finish in the 2016 Austrian Grand Prix was far better than Bianchi's result in the Principality. To put that car 12th on the grid, maintain position until the late stages, and scrape through into the points, while your teammate has an anonymous run to 16th, is pretty incredible in my opinion. This finish also put Manor ahead of the so far pointless Sauber team and in the crucial 10th place in the constructors' standings. He fell back down to earth in Silverstone, spinning off in tricky conditions on lap 6, then in Hungary put 3 seconds on Haryanto in a wet qualifying as the Indonesian crashed and brought out a red flag in the final minute of the session, then Pascal dumped half a minute on him in the race. The gap was 48 seconds in the German's favour in Hockenheim, then once the paddock returned from a summer break, he had a new teammate in the other car. Haryanto's state sponsors from his home country had failed to pay up the money they owed, and he was replaced by the 2015 GP3 champion Esteban Ocon. In Spa, Wehrlein retired due to a collision on the opening lap, but I can't find any footage or note of this in any video or article or race report. Then in Monza qualified 14th and was running about 20 seconds clear of Ocon before an oil leak forced him out on lap 26. He finished 16th in Singapore, 15 seconds ahead of his teammate, then extended that gap to just under half a minute in Malaysia. A particularly weak performance in Suzuka saw Wehrlein qualify and finish last, then he got back on form in Kota by pulling 35 seconds on Ocon. Esteban Gutierrez took him out on the opening lap in Mexico, then in Brazil he struggled to 15th while his teammate finished 12th. Meanwhile over at Sauber, Felipe Nasr dragged his car into 9th place to claim 2 points, usurping Wehrlein's result from Austria earlier in the season to leapfrog the Manor outfit. The final race of the season in Abu Dhabi saw a good qualifying translated to a 14th place on race day for Pascal as he completed his rookie campaign in F1. During the first half of the year, he had a strong upper hand on Haryanto, being more than half a second quicker on Saturdays on average, and balancing out to nearly 40 seconds clear in the races both drivers finished. Ocon was closer, especially on Sundays, but Pascal still beat him overall. The Manor team went bust at the end of 2016, and Wehrlein joined Sauber in January 2017 to stay on the grid, while Felipe Nasr was supposed to go the other way, but ironically, the Brazilian's amazing 9th place finish at his home race denied his new employers the £30 million in prize money given to the 10th constructor in the points standings. Had he done what Charles Pic did in 2012 by letting Vitaly Petrov through in the Caterham to benefit the team he was going to next year, NASA could have stayed on the F1 grid. Wehrlein was also rumoured to be in the running to replace the recently retired Nico Rosberg at Mercedes, as it would have been almost perfect to have a German product of their driver academy take the seat, but Valtteri Bottas was selected instead, most likely as a result of the fact that he was more of an experienced and proven quantity, having spent 4 impressive years at Williams instead of 1 impressive year at Manor. Had Mercedes tried to get Wehrlein a seat at one of their other customer outfits like Williams or Force India, it could have given him a path to go to the main team alongside Hamilton, rather than leaving to join the Ferrari-powered Sauber. Pascal missed the opening 2 races of the year in Australia and China, thanks to injuries sustained in a pre-season crash at the Race of Champions, which I watched live on TV, and kicked off his campaign in Bahrain by out-qualifying his new teammate Marcus Ericsson by half a second and finishing 11th in the race. He had a poor weekend in Sochi, then in Spain had a fantastic Sunday, capitalising on a luckily timed virtual safety car to take 7th place on the road, but he received a 5-second time penalty for failing to keep to the right of the pit entry bollard, dropping him to 8th. He was taken out by Jenson Button in Monaco, then struggled to 15th in Canada. Wehrlein took his 2nd point scoring finish of the year in Baku, getting 10th, then came 14th in Spielberg, 22 seconds clear of Ericsson. A mediocre performance in Silverstone preceded a better one in Hungary, then he had to retire with suspension issues on lap 2 in Spa. He got 16th in Monza, then an impressive 12th in Singapore, before pulling half a minute on Ericsson in Malaysia after the Swede recovered from 3 consecutive race retirements in the previous rounds. Lackluster weekends in Suzuka and Kota saw Pascal struggle, then he rounded out the year with a triplet of successive 14th places in Mexico City, Interlagos and Abu Dhabi. The best drive of his sophomore season was undoubtedly his P8 in the Spanish Grand Prix in the worst car on the grid, and while Ericsson failed to score points all year, with the best result of 2 11th places in that Spain race and Baku where Wehrlein got 10th, those 2 weekends got Pascal 5 points on his tally for the year. Weirdly, despite the 5-0 victory in the standings, when accounting for caveats, Wehrlein was on average only 61 thousandths of a second clear of Ericsson in qualifying, and their race gaps to each other in events they both finished averaged out to a minuscule margin of 1/10 of a second. The Swede had already garnered a reputation, thanks to the fact that he was obviously favoured over Felipe Nasr in their time in 2015 and 2016 as teammates, despite it being blindingly obvious from the Brazilian's amazing 5th place on debut in Melbourne that he was better than any result Marcus would ever achieve in his entire F1 career. It's likely that while it was less obvious than with Nasr, Ericsson still got a leg up thanks to the new investment firm Longbow Finance taking a controlling stake in the team. While Longbow was itself a Swiss company with no particular affiliations or interests, 3 of the supposed owners of this group were Swedish billionaires, which was most likely the reason the mediocre Marcus was kept in F1 as long as he was. I actually plan to cover this topic in its own separate video because it's a cesspool of politics that essentially killed 2 fantastic drivers' careers. Obviously, it capsized Nasr's chance to continue, but it also ruined Wehrlein as despite his performances in 2017, it was Ericsson who was selected to partner Charles Leclerc at the Sauber team for 2018. Pascal failed to find another seat on the grid and returned to Mercedes in DTM for 1 season before making a career switch to Formula E the year after. He won the 2024 championship, beating out Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy, and even now is only 29 years old, despite being out of F1 for 7 years. He wasn't given a fair chance due to factors outside of his control, whether it be Mercedes failing to get him a good seat for 2017 like they did for Ocon, who Wehrlein had outperformed in 2016 as teammates, or Sauber sabotaging him even though he was clearly the quicker driver, and yet he still comfortably usurped Ericsson in the points standings. He should have stayed on for 2018 alongside Leclerc, then we'd have had a much better yardstick to measure his talent against than his 3 teammates who all had some sort of asterisk looming over their performance. Pascal Wehrlein never got a fair crack at F1, and it's a damn shame because drives like Austria 2016 and Spain 2017 make you step back and take notice of a young prodigy. Anyways, with that being said, I think that brings today's video to a close. I hope you enjoyed me detailing the wasted prodigy of Pascal Wehrlein, and if you did, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to see more content from me in the future. You can also subscribe to my Patreon if you'd like to see exclusive content, get videos a day early, and have an opportunity to converse with me personally for as little as $1 per month. Big shout out to my already existing Patreon subscribers Andy Lamberts, Eamon Al-Dowdy and George Stratford, and you can also follow my X/Twitter account where I post boiling hot lava takes on F1, IndyCar and NASCAR, and follow my Instagram for behind the scenes updates. With my shameless plugging over though, I'm Nedzo and I'll see you all later. Bye!